Hey there, and thank you for listening to the Dream Center Peoria podcast. Dream Center Peoria exists to impact families living in poverty, starting with kids and youth. If you want to learn more about what we're up to at the Dream Center, you can find us online at dreamcenterpeoria.org or on social media at Dream Center Peoria. Thanks for listening.
Hi, this is Andy King, Executive Director of Dream Center Peoria, and welcome to what we feel will be a little bit of a different podcast. In fact, over these next few weeks, we're going to be doing some podcasting, mainly because we're in a bit of a crazy time at the minute. Right as we speak, we are in a bit of a shutdown here in Illinois with regards to the coronavirus. And so when all of this started last week or a week and a half ago, where things were being spoken about with regards to shutdowns and schools being out of school and shut down, and when we started hearing about how this was going to affect the economy for us at the Dream Center, it means something a little bit different. We have an organization that literally is running 24/7 and cannot be shut down, primarily because the majority of some of our ministries that we have is dealing with the homeless, women and children, father and dads or families that are homeless within the Peoria area. And so as schools were being told and school kids were being told to go home and workers were being told to go and work from home, we can't send the homeless home. They are at home with us at the Dream Center. We call all of our homeless folks that come through the doors, they are our homeless guests, and we want to treat them that way. And so over the last week or so, our operations have been somewhat limited to just try and meet the needs within the Peoria area. And if you don't know anything about the Dream Center, we have 3 divisions at the Dream Center. DCP Cares, which is a lot of our outreach programs that we do throughout the year. Some may be recognized by things like Backpack Peoria, where we give away 2,500 backpacks every year, and many, many other different programs like that we do. That's under our DCP Cares category. Then we have our DCP Students, which is all of our after-school programming and some of the things that we do not only after school but also out of school, our summer camps, and that's where our trade school comes into play, where we teach the trades within our trade school. And so that's another element that we do. And then our final one is DCP Housing, which is our homeless shelter. It's also our 21 apartments, which we use to transition folks from homelessness back into society. And they're able to stay in these apartments, and we help them get their feet back underneath them and be able to walk back into life. And so there's some of the things that we do. And as you can imagine, when this all started to erupt about a week ago, we had to look at how we were going to do things around the Dream Center without putting our volunteers at risk, without putting our staff at risk, but yet still being able to carry on 24/7. And so you may have seen some updates, but if you hadn't, some of the things that we were doing was obviously carrying on our homeless shelter and turning to the community for help and support as we perhaps have to get more staff involved and get restaurants involved, providing food and all different types of things like that, as well as our out-of-school kids that are out of school. But we knew that if we weren't there to step in the gap, then these kids may be at home on their own all day. They maybe not be getting a meal. They definitely wouldn't be getting help with their educational needs. And so we've been there this week for a handful of the students that we knew would be in those high-risk categories to be able to really step in and help those students. And just hats off to all of the staff at the Dream Center that are going above and beyond, trying to really make a difference, not just a regular day of the year, but also when it's tough, when it's hard, when everything's shutting down. We've still got workers there. We've still got people caring and loving people. We've got people that are bringing dignity and compassion and purpose. And so massive props to all the staff. We have an incredible staff of about 40 people that run the Dream Center, and we've all been able to just do things differently. Our new reality for some of us is perhaps not being in the office all the time, but perhaps being, at a home or at a coffee shop, which now they've shut the coffee shops. And so just being able to really work in a new reality this week has been challenging, but yet we really feels rewarding because we get to still share the love of Christ, even when it's tough, even when it's hard. I was going back and forth this week with some people in the city, and they were just saying how appreciative they were of the sign that is on top of the Dream Center, which says Jesus is, because the day that they were texting me this, with all this craziness that was going on, this mom had just given birth to a baby, and she could see out of her window the Jesus is sign as the hospitals are directly across from the Dream Center building. And so it's at times like that where we've got to keep sharing the love of Christ through what we do and through how we do it. And so here's what we wanted to do tonight. We're going to do things completely different than recent podcasts. We are going to try to, in the next few days, go to people live via phone or video, depending on how we can do it, and just find out what they're doing and how they are making an impact. And so tonight, we're going to be talking to Chris, who is our shelter administrator manager. He is like, when it comes to the shelter, the homeless shelter, which we have around 80 to 100 people there most nights. The majority are women and children. And here's a crazy statistic that the average age of that 100 that we see, the average age is 9 years of age. And so the way that we care for our shelter guests is important to us, and we have a lot of young kids. And so what I thought was, as we are here, we are going to just jump on the phone. I'm going to call Chris, and we're going to have a chat with him and see how his week has gone, because I know he's been working very hard this week, and so hopefully we'll be able to catch him. So excited to talk with Chris tonight.
Yes, hello, Andy.
Hey, Chris, how are you doing?
Good, great. How about you?
I'm doing great. I know that you have had a crazy week this week. You don't have there isn't a typical week for you anyway. But
No.
But this week has been just pretty crazy for you. And so before we get into it, just give us a bit of a brief on who you are, what you do, and then we'll talk about some of the things that have happened this week and that type of thing. But let's just find out a bit about you, Chris, and how you even got into this Dream Center story of ours.
Sure, absolutely. So, my wife, Melanie, has been a member at Riverside Community Church for now, 14 years, going on 14 years this year, I believe, and involved in volunteer work there at the church, and that's how I first got familiar with, by my attending church, I got familiar with the Dream Center, and some of the people that worked there, like Juan Rios, back then at that time. And I was always interested in doing a little bit more than just simply paying my tithes and going through the motions and things like that. So that was my introduction to it was via the church.
Yeah.
And so I started one shift a week as a site manager at the Dream Center, which is downstairs at the front desk. And then it just went. I mean, it went from there. I didn't see it as I saw it just as ministry purely, and didn't see it as an occupation. And to a great degree, I still don't, even though this is just pretty much all I'm consumed with now,
Right.
and have been for the last 2.5 years. But it's I've always seen it as not just a job nor a career, but a calling.
Yes.
And started working in the on the shelter floor when we just had the 3rd floor. We had just gone from being an overnight shelter to a full 24-hour shelter.
And that was about, what, 2-3 years ago, something like that, 2 years ago?
That was, almost 3.
Yeah.
Almost 3, right around 3 years. Right around 3 years now. And so I came in at that point right there, and there was just so much going on. We were trying to catch up. We were trying to catch up with how to actually best perform what our intentions were, what our mission statement, is.
Right.
And it wasn't as difficult for me. I don't think, and I don't think it's as difficult for some people, because when we say that Dream Center is based on broken people, helping broken people, that's a reality. That's not just a nice sounding cliche. It's a reality. And not to minimize this past week and the pandemic that we're grappling to deal with, it's just not as traumatic.
Right.
Once you've experienced, and more importantly, once you have not just experienced suffering, but once you begin to see the human condition from God's perspective,
Yeah.
it's a little bit different.
Yeah.
I'm more concerned, for instance, with I have to make sure, my job is to make sure that policy is in place. I am responsible for the safety, the sanitation, and the serenity of the shelter, both 3rd and 4th floor of the shelter in total. Daily operations, all daily operations. It's not what concerns me more than the physical virus itself. What to me is much more contagious and much more fatal is the attitude.
Yeah.
This pessimistic and hopeless and faithless attitude towards these types of trials.
Yeah.
These types of obstacles that we encounter. You'd be surprised to see how easily some of our clients, some of our guests, respond to this.
Right.
Respond to these types of crises. So right now, I am let's see what my title is. It kind of changes now and then. It's very basically, I am Miss Christy Schofield, who is the Director of Homelessness and Housing.
Right.
Because we have the permanent supportive housing there as well, the village. I'm strictly homeless, so I'm the Assistant Director of Homelessness / the Shelter Administrative Manager. Okay. So, yeah.
And Chris, you do an amazing job. I mean,
thank you.
Just with what you do, and you touched on it briefly at the beginning there, but I'm just going to expound on it. The majority of the staff that come and work at the Dream Center are there not to get a paycheck. They're not there to get a title that they work at the Dream Center. They are there for pure passion to impact people's lives, and impact people's lives not just physically but spiritually. And when you get the right staff around you to do that, it makes it way easier then when there's a crisis like what's happening right now, to rally around the staff and to ask them to perhaps step into something new or to do something that is not on their job description, because it comes from a pure passion of life and not just a job. And Chris, we see that in you. I mean, okay, and I know you wouldn't want me saying this, but I got on the phone with Chris earlier today, and he apologized for not picking up the phone, not knowing that he had just done a double shift because someone was sick and couldn't come in during the night. So he did an all-day yesterday and just stayed and did an all-nighter. That is the commitment not only Chris but to so many others at the Dream Center. And so I just wanted people to understand, because there is a difference. There's a difference. You can walk into a non-profit organization and you can tell the people who are there because it's a job compared to people who are passionate about what they're doing. And I just wanted to give you a shout out there, Chris. Now, going into what has happened this last week, obviously, there's some pressures that come for us. Obviously, making sure that no one comes into the building that may have coronavirus, and if they do, getting them quarantined and everything else, and that whole side. Can you just perhaps give us a rundown of some of the things, some of the changes that we did a little bit this week, and then perhaps we'll talk about some of the amazing things that are happening on that floor. But what did we have to do? What were some of the things that we had to make little changes on just with regards to this week?
Sure, absolutely. So before I address the challenges, the successes are this, and and some of them happen to be, we know it's no coincidence, but some of them happen to be incidental, as a matter of fact. So with the new expansion, and it's such a blessed expansion.
Yeah. Yeah, and Chris, I'm sorry. Let me just tell the listeners here about the expansion, because for those who this may be the first time listening, our homeless shelter up until just before Christmas was on one floor of the Dream Center, where we would squeeze in. It was built for 30 or 40 people, and we were getting anywhere between 80 to 100 people each night. That's where everyone ate. That's where everyone communed. That's where laundry was there. I mean, showers. I mean, everything was on that floor. And so about 6 months ago, we started a renovation of one of the floors that was directly above that floor that has always been empty at the Dream Center. I mean, when we say empty, there was nothing on that floor. No plumbing. The electric was very limited. Just brand new windows and sprinklers. That's all we had. And we renovated that floor to become the homeless shelter that has now dining area. We went from 56 square feet of dining space to 1,200 square feet of dining space. We have a serving kitchen. We have community areas. We have an area for like a class type of setting where we can do PowerPoints and people can see all these different classes. We have a room for pregnant moms who come in. We have a room that is designated for any women that come in from the sex trafficking, trying to escape it, or human trade. So when Chris talks about the expansion, just to try and let you know, that's what he's talking about. We literally doubled our space to be able to serve our homeless guests with dignity, compassion, and purpose. So Chris, tell us a bit more about this week.
Mm-hmm. So, and yes, exactly. So because of that expansion, so now, just last week, in order to get ahead, if that's even possible, to get ahead of this pandemic in our community and how it's touching us, I implemented I went ahead and published a infectious disease outbreak policy. So that policy outlines, and I drew from a lot of different sources in order to build it, and the multitude of counselors, there's safety. And so I've reached out to, as a matter of fact, today, earlier today, this evening, after our conversation, actually, Andy, I called Peoria Police Department. I spoke with someone there concerning what their contingency plans were, since we're going to be now at, shelter at home, shelter in place. Yeah. And get their feedback so that we don't inundate them. We don't inundate the hospitals in our communities unnecessarily. Right. And I have a kind of inside track on that because my wife is a medical professional. So I get good information from her, invaluable information from her.
Sure.
I reached out to a shelter in Chicago and also a shelter in Los Angeles to get some input on exactly how they're dealing with this situation. And so last week did that, and as I gathered the information and constructed that policy, one of the things that is required is that we have quarantine space to accommodate the eventuality of having to isolate someone who's presenting with symptoms. So, prior to the expansion, that simply was not possible.
Yeah, there was nowhere for that.
Wasn't possible. It just was not possible. Everything was on one floor. Everything. We fed, we slept, we fed, we showered, we washed, everything. We served the food, everything, one floor. Now, with having 2 full floors, very spacious, very accommodating, state-of-the-art, what we're able to do, I have 4 rooms on the 4th floor, which is dedicated to dining and day services. I have 4 rooms there that I can accommodate people and isolate them, quarantine them if necessary. I have a couple right now, and a man and a woman. The woman is due any day to deliver her child.
Wow.
High risk pregnancy, all kind of complications. And I was having a discussion with her and her husband just yesterday, and they were saying they were very grateful. They're very grateful people, very quiet, very unassuming, humble.
Yeah.
And they were concerned. The husband was concerned. He said, I'm willing to, if in one of the family rooms we could just kind of have a corner there, and I can stay with her to be able to help her, and if we can have, just a couple of things, I could bring them in. And I said, no, you don't understand. You're not going to be on the 3rd floor. You're not going to be in the communal living space at all. I'm going to provide you and your wife with a room, you, your wife, and your child.
Right.
So when she returns from hospital, we're going to do everything to keep you and your family safe. And you won't have to worry about that.
That's so good.
And the look, just the relief, it was like you could visibly see 1,000 pounds of stress just leave the man's shoulders. And I know that feeling personally.
Yeah.
I know that feeling. I know the reaction. And so I knew what I was seeing. And if no one else was ever grateful for the entirety of my career there, I'll remember that, and it's enough.
Yeah.
It's enough. But with the floor, with the expanded floor, we can do that. It's much more sanitary. It is much more, it's as if it was just in the nick of time for what we're facing right now.
Absolutely.
Because we can actually do it. We can actually do it. And I know that it can be done even with our difficulties and our challenges with being properly staffed, for instance.
Yeah.
Just recently came up with a contingency plan to keep the shelter running, keep us serving. We're serving approximately right now 60 to 70 every night, and that's just that's a conservative average. 60 to 70 nightly, 3 meals a day, of course, and we are able now to provide the space that is necessary to keep people, to keep the spread of this at a minimum.
Yeah.
We're able to feed better. We're able to provide the sleeping area, just the common areas. We have enough room to have everybody go to one end of the 4th floor, clean the dining area, have them shift from the lounge back into the dining area and clean the lounge area repeatedly throughout the day to keep the germs down and just to make people feel better. And Chris, to make them feel safer.
Yeah, Chris, I know as well, just this week I was just thinking about that floor. If people go onto our website, dreamcenterpeoria.org, and click on the housing page, they'll be able to see the opening of the floor, so they can see the space that we're talking about. I mean, we went above and beyond in creating that to be a state-of-the-art homeless shelter, to set a new precedence for how our homeless guests should be treated. not just by the way we treat them, but also the space as well, and bringing dignity to that. And just thinking about that this week, and you're absolutely right. If this had happened 6 months ago, we would not have known what to do, because we wouldn't have had the space. There would have been nowhere for people to go. Right now, we can spread people out a little bit, talk about social distancing and the 6 feet between people. That's
exactly what I was about. Yep.
We can do that now, whereas before it was a corridor that people were hanging out in. And so it's just been a blessing, and the timing. Obviously, we hate to see things like this happen, but to be able to now step in and serve, and hear the stories of people's lives being changed through this space, and how people's attitudes even change from what was downstairs to this new space. Because I've always believed that if people can be feeling better about themselves and where they're at in their environment, it does change their behavior as well. And,
absolutely.
And you've seen that.
A person with a new pair of shoes or outfit on, it just changes the way you feel. Yeah, absolutely. And
I mean, you're obviously seeing. I mean, you know, being real transparent here, we would see the police come to our facility quite a bit when we were on the third floor, just because people are on top of one another constantly. And now, Chris, how has it been the last few months with that side of things, especially this week? I mean, just how has it been on that side of things?
Definitely not as hectic as far as police intervention and things like that. We experience repeatedly, a confluence of things, the timings of things, different times of the year. We just, we're coming out of the winter months where we were a warming center, and so we did have, heightened population and everything, and then people on top of people things, coming out of the basement into the expanded shelter. People had to kind of get used to it, and they're still getting accustomed to it, because, of course, with privilege comes accountability.
Right.
And because it's so very nice, and we have to keep it nice.
Yeah.
Not just because of the financial investment that has gone into it, but what we're trying to do is, okay, so people very rarely appreciate a rest stop. They take it for granted.
Yeah.
You drive down the road, there's the rest stop. You stop, you do your business, you leave. You don't really look around. You don't really appreciate what it is. But community, moving the mentality of the people that we serve from rest stop mentality into them buying into community within the shelter, that attitude then translates to a feeling of community, of belonging in the community at large, and that accountability of helping. We enlist the assistance. We don't make anyone, we don't force anyone, but we welcome the assistance of volunteers that are residents with us.
Yeah.
Their help in keeping things clean, and also helping to cheer people up, that are there, that are down and out. And we have to. It's tight.
Yeah. It's
tight. I was there this morning, serving breakfast by myself, running up and down from the 3rd floor to the 4th floor, serving breakfast, serving coffee, cup by cup, because in order to keep it sanitary, you don't want communal stuff. So cup by cup, and they were so grateful, and it was so peaceful this morning. And the dialogue, it wasn't chaotic. It wasn't chaotic at all. The conversation, even though I was running fundamentally an assembly line, I didn't run it with an assembly line mentality. I wasn't just standing there with a dour look on my face, going through the motions. Right. I was having conversations with everyone, and people were assisting me, and it was really more. It was a family atmosphere as opposed to an institutional atmosphere. Yeah. And that doesn't come from policy. That comes from people. Yes. That comes from each individual staff member coming in and dealing with it as if, hey, if that was my grandmother. Hey, if that was my sister. Hey, if that was my child. Right. And then dealing with it, it's a little bit different how you hand a person their meal when you have that in mind.
Yes. That's so good, Chris. And Chris, I don't know how long this whole thing is going to be going on. We're looking at obviously programs that are later in the year and what we do with them. But what I do know is that in the midst of all that chaos, you are a calming force on that floor. And we just appreciate you. We appreciate the team. We appreciate the volunteers that we allow onto the floor normally. But obviously, within the midst of all this, we're not able to have volunteers come into the Dream Center at the moment like we normally would. And so, Chris is running around like crazy, mainly because there's people that could be there normally, but we can't have them in. But we just wanted to. What we'll do, Chris, is if you're cool with this, perhaps later next week or early into the following week, we'll catch up with you again. We'll do another podcast with you again and just try and find out some more of the stories and what's been going on even in this next week as spring break is happening and everything else. But Chris, we just thank you for what you're doing and keep going, brother. And we'll definitely.
It's a privilege. If I may, just one note on housekeeping that, and it just dawned on me. You asked earlier. Yeah. Concerning things to tweak, and it's just one thing, and it's a very simple thing, but it's the simple things that mean the most. Our community have been so generous. All of our resources, so generous. But what they've given is mainly been in bulk. Yeah. So, for instance, bulk peanut butter. So peanut butter in large jars and things like that. What we need right now because of this is individually packaged food items. So the packages of peanut butter, the packages of jelly, not just the bulk containers. Because with those bulk containers, it makes it very difficult to serve. Yeah. Because, it makes it difficult to serve because we have to have it where it's sanitary. And the individual packages give us that. It allows us that. It makes it much more easier to serve the people. So for our donors who may be listening, please keep that in mind, especially when it comes to foodstuffs. Yeah. The individually packaged items are much better for us right now, especially right now. So thank you very much.
Great. Well, Chris, we will talk to you in a week or so, just going over some of those things. I'm going to just quickly share about some of the needs. But again, Chris, thank you so much for everything you're doing. Keep going, and we'll chat soon. All right.
You're welcome. Thank you, Andy.
Thanks, Chris. God bless. God bless. Bye. So there's Chris. I mean, he is literally on the front lines of what we are doing. And we have had an outpouring of churches and individuals and businesses. Today we had a group of doctors that contacted us and wanted to help. And people are asking, how can we help? And so you heard Chris just then talk about if you're wanting to get things to the Dream Center, make sure it's individually packaged. And so I wanted to just share real quick ways that you can get involved with what we're doing. If you go onto our website, dreamcenterpeoria.org/coronavirus, there is a page on there that talks about the needs that we have within the Dream Center at this time as we're serving folks who don't have a home to go to, or kids don't have a home to really be at during the day. And so go there and you can find a lot of things. Two things I want to highlight really is one, what Chris just mentioned about gift baskets or items that you could bring to the Dream Center to be able to help us. Now, you can bring them to the Dream Center. You'll see them all on there, non-perishable items, which we will then create into gift baskets and give not only to our homeless, the homeless shelter, but also we want to give baskets to each family that live in the Dream Center. We have over 20 different families that actually live in our permanent supportive housing there. So you'll see the list. Just go to dreamcenterpeoria.org/coronavirus. You'll see it. One of the other things that I wanted to challenge people with, and this is a little bit tough because it's financially hard. Every night we have to feed, as Chris said, 60, 80, 100 people, depending on who is in our doors at that time. We have to provide a meal, and we partner with the Salvation Army, and they do an amazing job in what they do. And they bring a hot meal at lunch and then sandwiches then for at night. And we're trying to pull away from the sandwich part at night and be able to provide a hot meal each night. And so to pull off a meal like that, it costs around $250 to feed 100 people. We have 4 or 5 locally owned restaurants that are there ready to provide the meal, and some will even deliver it to the Dream Center. You as a group could go and pick it up and bring it to the Dream Center also. But what we're looking for is groups, churches, youth groups, different business groups, small groups, to be able to provide that meal for $250, which is what we have to do each and every night. So if you can financially help us with that, that's a huge part of what we do, is feeding. Last year we fed over 80,000 meals at the Dream Center. And that just doesn't happen. We have to do it. And so we're looking for people to really step on board with us. People often ask me, Andy, how much does it cost to run the Dream Center? Well, our budget every year is around $1.7 to $1.9 million to run everything that we do. Just to break it down, after all the grants that we get from many places and the foundations and how the Heart of Illinois, United Way help us, all these different agencies that help, we still have to find around $3,000 a day to keep the Dream Center going. So every gift helps. So if you can help us with that in any way whatsoever, please just jump onto our website, dreamcenterpeoria.org/give, and you'll be able to help us there. Well, we're going to be bringing some of these podcasts to you over these next few weeks, and so we just want you to stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe to the Dream Center podcast. And again, thank you for listening, and thank you, Peoria, for helping everything that we do here in the community. Again, we are here to impact families living in poverty, starting with kids and youth. And that's what we do each and every day. So if you can partner with us to help us, whether that's serving with us and volunteering with us, whether that's financially helping, whether that's resourcing what we do, then please come on the journey with us. Again, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Thanks again for listening to the Dream Center Peoria podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode. If you know of anyone that would be interested in hearing about what we just talked about, we would encourage you to share this episode with them. Be sure to stay tuned for future episodes. Thanks.